I have the high honor of introducing our keynote speaker, Justin Constantine, and I hope during the social hour, many of you got to meet Justin briefly in that area. I first met Justin and his journey in military medicine several years ago at a Henry Jackson Foundation Heroes of Military Medicine event that was held in downtown D.C. So then fast forward from that to last year, right after this Letterman event last fall, we began planning for tonight's event, which we will do probably, we get a week to take a breath, and then we start again thinking about next year. So nominators, be thinking about it. So I made a comment at one of our planning meetings that I thought it would be a great idea to have a first-person recipient of military care to address this group. And the committee said, that's great, go do it. So good ideas are often rewarded in that fashion. So that casual suggestion became a tasker to me to track down Justin and ask him to join us here tonight. There's an extensive bio sketch in your program, which I encourage you to read later. But through Justin's journey of courage, injury, and ultimate triumph, he teaches all of us about teamwork, leadership, and power within each of us to create positive transformation. Justin is the embodiment of Dr. Letterman's vision and is with us tonight because of the innovations that were really begun way back in the Civil War medicine days. Justin is a Marine, a combat veteran, a widely acclaimed speaker on leadership and inspiration, and I'm deeply honored and humbled to call him a friend. Ladies and gentlemen, Lieutenant Colonel retired Justin Constantine.
Well, good evening, and thank you very much for that warm welcome. It's an honor to be here. As Craig said, I do a lot of seeking out there. I have my own business as an inspirational seeker. I talk to a lot of corporations, so this is a lot more personal, and I'm excited to be here. I did tell myself I wasn't going to have any dessert tonight because I'm always out there and I'm eating too much, but this cheesecake is delicious, and you innovative medical people need to come up with something, besides me not controlling myself, you need to come up with something to fix that issue. So I'm going to spend about 15 or 20 minutes talking with you just a little bit about my background. I'm looking forward to bragging about the Navy corpsman who saved my life, and then I'll wrap up with just some final thoughts for you moving forward. But before I do that, I have to run after this, just reading what the nominees have done this year. Each and every one of you is incredible, and I've read previously to what some of the past recipients have done, and your community is incredible. It saved my life, and so I just want to tell you all thank you very much for what you're doing for the rest of us. As far as my background goes, I joined the Marine Corps while I was in law school. I went to Officer Candidate School after my second year of law school. Graduated from there, went back and finished law school, and then served on active duty as a defense counsel and then criminal prosecutor. But when I deployed to Iraq in the fall of 2006, it wasn't in the role of a JAG officer. In the Marine Corps, the officers learn the basics of many different positions. So I volunteered for the deployment as a civil affairs team leader. In that capacity, I had the honor of leading a small team of 8 Marines. We were attached to a Marine infantry battalion located between the towns of Fallujah and Ramadi in Al-Anbar province. Now, in the Marine Corps, all the officers go to what's called the basic school, which is 6 months of training in Quantico to learn the basics of being a rifle platoon commander. As part of that instruction, the trainers periodically read to us inspirational stories of amazing bravery and valor displayed by other Marines in previous wars or earlier in war. Not only are these stories designed to honor those individuals, but we are to learn from the stories and then to strive to emulate them as we are pushed to the limit out there in the future. In fact, I remember reading one of those stories to my Marines before we deployed. In that vein, I want to tell you about the Navy corpsman who saved my life in Iraq. because of who you are and because of your interest in military medicine, I believe and I hope it will strike a chord with all of you. And we were on a regular combat patrol on October 18, 2006. And we got to an area where we knew an enemy sniper had been operating because he had already killed a few of our Marines. But of course, that wasn't going to get in the way of our mission. Interestingly, we had a reporter with us that day. And he and others had told me what happened because I don't remember most of it. I know we stopped at one of our forward operating, actually first we stopped by an Iraqi police station. It had been shot up the night before by the insurgents, and at that point in time, the insurgency was at its most powerful level. So our colonel wanted to talk to their police chief about how to better defend their position. Often they were actually overpowered by the insurgents. We went to our next forward operating base, which was always unprotected. I was very nervous when we went there. It was actually a bridge. The Marines were guarding an overpass, monitoring the traffic, keeping an eye out for certain things. So we would go there and sometimes spend the night there if we had a night patrol. And it was unprotected. We slept under the stars, which is, not good in downtown Iraq at the time. I guess I noticed at the time the reporter was just standing very still, which is a terrible idea, as you can imagine, if there might be a sniper targeting you. Well, we got in the vehicles and went to the next stop. He and I were riding in the same vehicle. And he told me later that we got out, and as we walked away from the vehicle at our third stop, I said to him, "Jay, you need to move quicker here. We don't want you to get hurt. Don't forget about that sniper." He said that based on that, he took a big step forward. And a split second later, a round came in where his head had been and it hit the wall between us. Before I could react, the next round hit me behind my left ear and exploded out of my mouth, causing incredible damage along the way. In fact, the Marines around me thought I had been killed. And when the Navy corpsman came running over, they said, "Don't worry about the major. He's dead." But George Grant is an amazing young man. Even though blood was pouring out of my skull and what was left of my face, he was somehow able to perform rescue breathing on me. Imagine that, the bullet had just exploded out of my mouth, some rescue breathing, and then he cut open my throat and performed an emergency tracheotomy so I wouldn't drown in my own blood. It was like a story I read to my Marines before we left. In the face of overwhelming adversity, with complete disregard for his own life, George was able to focus solely on me and keeping me alive. In fact, despite all that was going on around him, including the fact that sniper was still shooting at the rest of the Marines, of course, and this wasn't one of the hospitals that you work in here. This is a battlefield. Some of you have been there. There was dirt and rocks and stones and dust and sand everywhere. And George was wearing 65 pounds of protective Kevlar armor, like we all were that summer. And, of course, it was over 100 degrees like every day there, and so he was sweating like crazy. But despite all that, my plastic surgeon here at the Naval Hospital of Bethesda told me later that he thought another surgeon had performed that surgery because George did it so perfectly. Now, pretty incredible, but keep in mind that George was only 25 years old at the time. This was George's first combat deployment. And on top of that, George had never performed this surgery on a human being before. He had done it once in a controlled training environment for Navy corpsmen out at Camp Pendleton, California, before the deployment. And he did that surgery on a pig. I don't know what it says about me, but the pig survived. He's running around somewhere. I'm still here. My mom's laughing somewhere. That's okay. I'm glad we're still here. But as part of a book I just recently finished writing about leadership, I asked George to commit to paper what that day was like and what happened. So I'm going to just take a couple minutes to read to you what he wrote for me. We started the mission and had made 2 stops prior to the last one. Shortly after dismounting the vehicle, I walked a few yards forward of your vehicle and turned my head as there was a shot fired. I can almost swear I saw you drop as I was taking cover. The colonel was between our position and yours, and he started running towards you. There was at least one more shot that caused him to seek cover behind the vehicle. Corporal Huerta, the reporter, and I took cover behind the vehicle that was in front of us. Corporal Huerta pushed the reporter into a vehicle for his safety. The vehicle pulled off, and Corporal Huerta let out a shout. He had been shot in the head too, but the bullet broke his goggles and miraculously did not injure him. At that point, I ran towards your position. I believe the colonel was kneeling by your side as you were face down. We turned you over, and I saw that your eyes were open, but you were unresponsive. There was a lot of damage to your face, and there was blood and bubbles coming up from what was left of your airway. To be honest, I thought you were dead. I then turned you onto your side, reached into my med pack, and placed a nasal trumpet in your airway. I wasn't sure whether you had a pulse or not, but you definitely weren't breathing. So I radioed the Lance Corporal Bueller to bring the vehicle to me and to tear down the spine board that was suspended in the back of the vehicle. I asked Lieutenant Mueller to get the folded stretcher from one of the Marines and to bring it to me. We took away your gear, and I decided the trumpet was probably not going to be very effective with your facial injuries, and I needed to secure an airway for CPR. I again went back into my pack and took out a combi tube and inserted it as the Marines prepared the stretcher. We then rolled you onto the stretcher, and we lifted you into my vehicle. I jumped in and took out the ambu bag and attached it to the tube as we pulled off. I tried to check replacement, but couldn't hear above the background noise and the high-speed driving. So I pumped the bag a couple more times until I thought I heard air. I turned you back onto your side and tried to recess you. While doing that, you woke up and became combative. You were gagging on the tube and reaching for it, and I was trying to calm you down. The vehicle was cutting through one of the blockades, and you were being thrown around the vehicle. So we had to slow down the medevac so that Lance Corporal Bueller could drive safely while reaching back and trying to hold you at the same time. You pulled the tube out, but we were able to calm you down. And I told you what had happened and that I needed to take care of your wounds. You seemed to understand what I was saying and who I was and complied. You kept gesturing at your throat and your chest as if you were having difficulty breathing. So I told you I was going to put another airway in, and I wanted you to not pull it out. After I placed it, I asked if your breathing had become better, and you nodded. Then I applied dressings to your wounds while Bueller and I kept talking to you and keeping you attentive. We pulled onto the base, and I explained to you that we were about to be at the shock trauma platoon and that you needed to get out and sit on the backboard or lay on your side. You again nodded as if you understood and did exactly what the doctors and nurses did exactly that when the doctors and nurses came to get you. They carted you off as I stood there and watched, kind of in shock at the ordeal. Everything kind of became a blur, I think. I'm not sure if Major Leonard was at the shock trauma platoon or back at the base when we left, but he was the first person I remember walking up to me and cleaning your blood off of my face. I was covered in it, but had not realized it. He told me that you were still alive and would probably survive. So that's what I think of when I think of military medicine and our military medical personnel, no matter what their job is. Courage, bravery under fire, selflessness, determination, perfect service. I also recently connected with a surgical team that operated on me right after I was shot, 30 minutes later. Because, as some of you know, the military can be an extremely small world. One of my Marine buddies, who I just started a business with, is actually married to one of the Navy surgeons who operated on me in Iraq. But of course, you know, the Marines aren't the smartest ones in the group. It took them 5 years to put this together. I said, Brian, you never had a conversation with your wife who was operating on people in Iraq when I was there, but he finally figured it out. Anyway, go figure. Those Air Force guys laughing, I get it, you're right. Yeah. But the trio of doctors told me I was actually the first case of such traumatic damage that they had seen there. Because typically, of course, people don't survive these types of wounds. But their training took over, and that's all they focused on. They worked together to stop the incredible bleeding, and then to package me, literally. They packed my wounds with gauze, and then packed my naked body in a massive amount of medical monitoring and IV equipment, keeping me alive from second to second, in a 3-layered body bag as tightly as they could, so I would survive the helicopter airlift over to the real hospital at Balad. My case, they told me, was then used to develop the protocol that this forward operating surgical unit used in treating other cases of such traumatic injury that the doctors would then see more and more during the course of their tours there. Fast forward to now, I've had over 24 reconstructive surgeries. And in fact, my first surgery was 19 hours long, and the doctors, obviously I wasn't always this good looking. It was quite traumatic at the time. My head was humongous. Doctors told my wife and my parents that if they waited 12 more hours to perform that surgery, my whole face would have collapsed because of the extensive damage to my skull and to my face. The medical teams over the years have removed fibular bones from both my legs to use in reconstructing my upper and my lower jaw. They've really reconstructed my whole injured head. They've completely rebuilt my mouth. I have bone tissue or bone marrow from my hip and my leg and all over the place. And they've also performed surgery on my cornea and tried to remove scar tissue from my retina from the shock blast from when the bullet went through my head. So over the last 9 years, I've learned some important lessons that have helped me cope with a truly life-altering situation. Now, what I've been through, obviously, is kind of on the extreme end of things. But what I've learned isn't. It's really kind of basic. Just as I face challenges in my personal and professional lives, everyone in this room has as well at some point or another. But I just want to quickly share one of those lessons with you. And that is, you are all stronger than you think you are. Now, in the Marine Corps, they train us very hard to be tough and efficient and extremely resilient, of course. Physical and mental fitness is a part of everything that we do. In fact, when I went to Officer Candidate School, I thought I was in really good shape. I had been playing competitive men's rugby for 10 years. I worked out all the time, the whole 9 yards, but I was in for a rude awakening. In fact, I lost almost 20 pounds in 10 weeks while I was there. Went back to law school, a completely different person. It's not a diet plan I recommend for anyone unless you like big angry men screaming at you for things that you didn't do at all, but they were convinced you did. I never met someone so angry about a rifle not being perfectly clean, but after we had to carry it through the water. But anyway, if someone had described to me the workouts we would be doing at the end of that 10-week period, prior to that, I would have said there's no way I can do that. I'm not capable of doing that stuff for hours and hours and hours. And similarly, because remember, I don't come from an infantry background, if someone had described to me what it's really like to carry 2 weapons and hundreds of rounds of ammunition and a Kevlar helmet, night vision goggles, and 65 pounds of armor, and to go out and conduct long foot patrols 4 or 5 or 6 hours at a time when it's 100 degrees, 105, 110 degrees on any given day, I very well may have said, that's too hard for me. I can't do that. But I did do that because we're all stronger than we think we are. And we are all capable of accomplishing amazing things. I think it's important for all of us to remember that. If you're having a tough day or a tough week or maybe a tough month and it feels like your whole world is caving down around you. Because it's important to remember that we're all survivors. We've all already overcome adversity of some sort. We've all fought our share of battles. If we dig deep, when you dig deep, you're going to find resources you may not have known you had before. You're going to bounce back from hard times. I've learned that many times over. Maybe not right away. It's 9 years later, almost 10 years, and I'm still getting surgeries. And maybe not very easily. You know, we've had our struggles over the last 9 years. But we've all bounced back. We've proven to ourselves, my wife and I, that our spirit is stronger than anything that can threaten to break it. You know, at the end of the day, life changes, for better or worse. It all depends how you look at it. I choose the glass to be half full, not half empty, and to embrace change. Now, I want to live life in the future, not the past, because I'm not defined by what happened to me in Iraq, but what I've done since then when I had some control over the situation. As George said, I was not breathing when he first rolled me over, and he thought I was dead. So I know that life can be tough and full of challenges. But trust me, life is beautiful and precious. It's something we should treasure, not just speed through. You know, life should be about celebration, like tonight, not just survival. I've learned that through inner strength, humility, and the victorious spirit, we are all capable of overcoming the toughest obstacles. Now, innovation in military medicine is what saved my life in Iraq. George as I told you, had never performed that type of battlefield surgery before. And neither have my surgeons. They just relied on their training, their creativity, and their commitment to simply finding a way to save that life in front of them. So in that vein, I thank you very much for allowing me to share my story with you and for acknowledging how critical the advancements in military medicine are for the rest of society. Perhaps the only good things that come out of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan are the groundbreaking advances forged by our medical military personnel. The rest of America benefits from your innovation, and we can't thank you enough. Thank you all very much for your time tonight. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Yeah. Thank you.